I would love to spend a couple of weeks just out in fucking the country with no television, no internet. Just food.
No motor cars, not a single luxury.
No motor cars.
Yeah. Like Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah, and just fucking like
sleep.
Yep. Outside. You know? Sleep for like fucking 12, 14 hours a day. Wake up and just eat and walk around.
Quite good. Attack warning. Is it for real? Attack warning for bloody real.
Live from Colorado Springs, the Drop Culture Podcast.
I want to confirm, is this an exercise? Roger, copy. This is not an exercise.
Come on, quick, get down. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome, everybody, to the Drop Culture Podcast. This is that podcast where we pick up that piece of pop culture you forgot about or missed, shine it up real nice, and cram it in your ear holes. I'm Dan.
I'm Brock.
And this week, like every week, we found something in the little nooks and crannies. Some of you guys are going to be like, yeah, of course you're going to cover this movie. Some of you are going to be like, what the hell are you talking about?
It was inevitable that this one was going to come up.
It was like Thanos.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is inevitable.
So what are we covering this week, Brock?
THX 1138.
Yes.
Not the student film.
I watched both for this. But yeah, we're going to dig a little deeper into the theatrical movie.
Yes.
But yeah, so this is George Lucas's directorial debut.
It's his
directorial debut.
Yes, debut. In 1971, American Zoetrope Studios was like, guess what? We're going to make a movie. And everybody's like, cool, what movie? And they were like, this movie, THX 1138.
And so let's talk about that because you mentioned it. American Zoetrope, first of all, was Francis Ford Coppola's basically creator-driven studio.
So the Rebel studio.
Well, and it was based off what the absolute hit that was Easy Rider. Because Easy Rider was made for like $300 and something thousand and made $60 million.
Yeah. Huge movie.
Because it was an art road movie kind of a deal.
Yep.
And I think that Coppola, so let's back that up just a little bit because the way that Coppola knew Lucas was Lucas had won the student film festival with
USC, right?
Well, no, from USC, but I mean this was the national film festival, and he had won it. And it was apparently like a jaw dropper, and that was the EBB, the THX EBB,
THX 1138 dash EB1 or something like Earthborn.
The Electronic Labyrinth.
Yeah,
it's like it was super long.
4EB.
Yeah, 4EB. Yeah. So that was basically what the movie we're going to talk about was based on, but it was like a 15-minute student film with very little dialogue.
No dialogue, just a lot of overlapping chatter.
Yeah, and you could really see that it was made in the 60s, like the late 60s.
1967 is whenever he made that. But that wasn't his original either, because somebody gave him the story.
Wasn't it Murch?
Something like that. Yeah, it was like,
there was quite a few of them that were in school together in that little group.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of considered themselves the bad boys of whatever, the arty.
Yeah, like, what's his name? Steven something. He's a very famous director. What's his name? Spielberg.
Oh, that Spielberg guy.
Yes, Steven Spielberg.
But at any rate, he had won. When he won that, he got a opportunity, and I believe it was with Warner Brothers, to go see whatever, like he could go be on whatever movie he wanted to be on and shadow the whole situation, you know, to become a director.
Nice.
And he chose, it was a Fred Astaire movie, somebody, Gene Kelly, I don't know, that Francis Ford Coppola was making. He chose it because Francis Ford Coppola was working on it.
Okay. Yeah. Because this is before Godfather. This is before...
Oh, yeah, this is...
everything, of course. Whatever you call... What was his... Apocalypse Now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's fucking cool as shit.
So that's where they met. And then they had worked on... So, yeah. So, like, that's where he met. And he's, like, really started telling him how the studio had kind of messed with the movie. Coppola was telling him the movie that he was making, you know. And that's really where Lucas got his, like, I don't want anybody messing with my movies kind of a thing. Like, part of, you know, just owning it.
Well,
and this was, like, of course, again, just being in the late 60s, early 70s, cinema was kind of dead at this time because you'd had all those older heads of cinema that had gone away, and now it's corporations that took it over, right? These are bookkeepers and people who know marketing, not people that know shit about movies.
Right.
So a lot of their control was unnecessary. Well, kind of like what we see with Warner Brothers today.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
They haven't really changed it.
So he started his own studio. They gave Lucas $777,777.77 budget to make this movie.
Yeah, THX 1138, which for a budget of a production movie, under $1 million, and you are basically trying to show the future.
Yeah.
It was a very tough order, but Lucas had the foresight to look at things in a different way to say, okay, well, that might be modern, but if we put it in this aspect, it's going to look fucking futuristic because nobody's seen this kind of shit before.
Well, not only that, I think one thing Lucas did, and you saw this in the Star Wars movies afterwards, everything wasn't shiny and new.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. It's, you know, it's
it was lived in.
Exactly.
They had the carbon scoring on the fucking. This was a very good primer for Star Wars, in the way that somebody can learn their craft with a movie like this because it's not a lot of dialogue.
Right.
You know, so you're really focusing on the way everything looks and how the story goes, and something like Lucas mixing this up in his attic and shit like that too. I think he was editing. Yeah,
that was really cool part of it. So like when he came, they asked him to do a script for it, and he's like, I'm not very good. And
he didn't know. Yeah.
So he tried, and Coppola's like, oh, you're right, you're not very good at this.
You suck. Sorry, dude.
So I think that's when he got with, was it Murch?
I think so. Walter Murch. Yeah. Walter Murch came back basically and was like, hey.
And they worked on it together.
Yeah.
To come up with the script that we see.
Yeah. And then he started really kind of writing shit down, and that was the precursor again to Star Wars.
Yes.
So to do a science fiction film, which this is pure science fiction in everything, but also social commentary, and I don't know, it was just this was one of the new era kind of things. Ushering in something that was different than what everybody had seen before, but more grounded in reality.
For sure. I would say yeah, you're right. But I would also say that this movie is his thought process behind it was really different, because it wasn't like, it was almost like found footage.
In a way, yeah.
From the future.
Yes.
Like somebody just picked this up, almost like, and he even said that he almost filmed like a documentary.
Yeah.
To some degree. Now he does a lot of cool things with the camera. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Well,
and he did in his student film too. That's really what carried that student film, because that student film again is only 15 minutes long. There's no dialogue. There's none of this backstory that we're about to get.
But that's where Lucas, but that's where Lucas gets most of his movie making ideas come from Japanese cinema, to where you have to be, I don't know, you have to just go into it and be comfortable with not knowing what's going on, because you're like, oh, okay, I'm thrust into this world, so I have no idea what it is, but it's there and they're not explaining it, so I have to accept it.
Absolutely. So, and then Lucas cites that a lot, that his cinematic movie, he wanted to initially film in Japan. Mm-hmm. He went to Japan to go scout places and then realized pretty quickly it was going to be really hard to film a movie there and get permission to all these places he wanted to go.
Plus the budget.
Yeah,
that's what kind of hurt him, yeah.
So,
which, if you think at that time too, consumerism had been really like rampant from the 50s after the war. WWII, going into Korea, then Vietnam, and then now he was kind of in the way that Romero was, in the way that it was kind of, they were looking at the culture saying, hey, we're doing is consuming shit, so let's just, everybody accept that this consumerism type deal is there.
Right.
But with this one, even though they're consumers in it, it's more sterile. It's a very sterile atmosphere to where people are just cogs in a wheel, almost like Metropolis in that aspect too.
I would say you're right. There's a point where, and we'll get to it, where things change. So you get to see the little more of the real.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And even looking at this movie now and seeing the way that they had used like mind controlling drugs, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, all of the shit like that, just so you can do your daily tasks, is a very big social commentary on 2023.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
Big time. And this was 71?
I was getting ready to say that it's probably more prescient now than it was even in the 70s.
Big time.
One of the things that I like that he ties into this too, and we'll get into this, is the religion side of it and how that placates the people.
Mm-hmm. It gives, and it did placate a lot of people in this, because it was just a meaningless type of a deal. And searching for meaning in a meaningless life is going to lead you to weird shit. And especially with something like this, where there's obviously huge rules in place to where you can't do this, and you got to live this way, and you have to show up to do this. And I mean, he's working in a high pressure kind of a job, and his partner, I guess, his roommate, is also doing something like that. But you can tell that it's something that they need these mind-altering drugs to get through.
Right.
Just like it is today. It's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
To really think about it and put it in that context, because it does make more sense now than it ever did.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's just because we've grown more into like a hyper... a hyper consumerism almost, you know what I mean?
Consume
now.
more, buy advertisements for this, that. The news that you're getting is the same.
Right.
Watered down. There's not really, it's just the way that the world is just, again, like Metropolis, you're just moving from your job to home, job, home, like they showed them in the original Fritz Lang Metropolis, where they're just kind of like turning a fucking dial for some goddamn reason.
Jetsons hitting the button.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's just what is going on. And so he grabbed a lot of this, and I know the director's cut, which I don't understand why the director's cut shows the preview to Buck Rogers.
Was the main thing that he changed. And it was to set I've actually heard, I don't know if it was him talking about it or someone else, but basically to set a precedent for what, because in that, here, let me say this. In that clip, he says, basically, he's just a regular guy, right?
Mm-hmm. But he's standing up to unregular odds, yeah.
But he does what, he perseveres. He does what needs to be done. You know what I mean?
It's the fortitude or something like that. Yeah.
So that was the premise, basically, of this guy, right?
That makes sense.
World,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't know why they threw that on there, because it really didn't have anything to do with the story. But that's one of the main things that you hear in that whole little deal right there.
And
keeps his wits about him.
Yeah, he keeps his. That's what it was. Keeps his wits about him. That's right. But that, and then like the I think he added that, and then there's a lot of parts where he made in the original part where they walk out into the traffic of people when he's escaping finally. That was really just 10 people walking in a circle.
I know. They didn't have
but
nothing.
When he went back and did the director's cut, he really used computers to put those people in there, and
this is a movie that needed what he did to Star Wars.
Right. What it didn't need was the weird monkey dog people.
That was unusual as fuck, yeah. I remember watching this. The first time that I ever watched THX 1138 was just like a lot of really great movies. Was on IFC back in the day, where they would show like the student film.
Sure.
And then they showed the movie, and you're like, what is going on? But yeah, it was so dated at that time. And we're talking like the early 90s type shit,
sure.
So it'd been out for a long time, and it still had that cult kind of following enough to where people were looking at that being like, what the fuck, right? What is this really saying about everything? Or just what is this? This was this guy's first one, and everybody's like, it's not that good. But right. I remember whenever the redo came out, the Redux, everybody was doing a lot of Reduxes at that time. Just like fucking Apocalypse Now had the Redux.
Right.
Adding in these things that they get to go do their original vision. But it opens this movie up to being 100 times better than it was before.
So I remember first seeing this on a VHS tape that like a friend gave me or something. It had like 4 or 5 movies on it.
Right, and this was one of them.
Yeah.
Damn.
And maybe not 4 or 5, maybe 2 or 3, whatever it was.
The SOP was.
Yeah. And it wasn't this version of it.
No.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But this is the only one. The director's cut is the only one I watched for this show.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I know I had a copy of the older one, but I don't know where it's at. I couldn't find it.
Well, it seems that like the only original copies you can get now are the video discs or the laser disc.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Dang. Or what about the CEDs? I bet you could find a CED of it.
Maybe.
That'd be crazy. No, but I guess we've talked a lot about just kind of like the way that the movie is and how crazy it is. And of course, everybody knows THX. 1138's been used in all the Star Wars and weird shit.
Yeah, you see it on a lot of things. The THX, for those that are uninitiated, is basically like the sound processing for movie theaters and then movies going into VHS back in the day. Or
THX invented...
It's like Dolby.
Yeah, the 5.1 basically.
Right,
they invented the 0.1 to have the one center channel in the back plus your rears. The way that THX did it is they did open up the soundscape to make it the experience instead of coming at you like all the other movies did. This was an immersive type of a thing, and especially sound. Sound plays a big part in all movies, and I know I always talk about it, but this one in particular, the sound design on this it felt real. It felt natural in the way that you have all this background noise and you have multiple conversations and you have all this stuff going on. And to pay attention to all of it, that's just kind of normal now. Because you have nothing but advertisements, radio, internet radio, this and that. Something's always fucking on. And especially with this. And it seemed a little weird that his job was so stressful, but yet they had the other people that were stressful, like watching him and running experiments on him and weird shit, right? But then they're always being watched, you know, and that gives you that sense of the big brother but that's fucking what it is like nowadays, I mean,
more so now because of smartphones and
all
everything
they needed
being connected, your Alexa.
Yeah. That's all they needed was a fucking phone on this, and they would have been like, that's the future.
Right.
George Lucas did this one, and then he was writing, what was it?
American Graffiti,
and then he did Star Wars. So you really, for a first time director to hit something that was like way ahead of everybody else to the extreme, even where Spielberg's like, greatest science fiction movie I ever seen.
Right.
Because this is pure
But I don't think it did very well commercially when it first came out.
No, people
and American
hated this
Graffiti
movie.
is really what saved him and gave him the ability to do Star Wars.
Yep, because everybody wanted the Hot Rod movie,
Right.
you know, and that was him living.
Well, and
in,
that's something he wanted too. He was like, I think he was even talking about it with somebody on this set where he's like, I've been thinking about doing this cruising movie, you know?
and it makes sense. So then you bring in like Ron Howard on that movie.
Right.
You have fucking Wolfman Jack.
Right.
Just those nights, and that's a piece of history that all those people loved.
Sure.
But then you have this movie starring Robert Duvall, for one. Robert Duvall has been in so many huge advanced movies.
Sure.
I mean, he was fucking Boo Radley in fucking To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
And that was his first thing that he ever did. And it was just a dude in a corner.
Yeah.
And then
This was really his first starring role.
Yeah, this was his first, his first main starring role.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons he took it. But then also on top of that, he was friends with Lucas for the film that he was working on with him. They were doing some movie called like Motor Wheels or some shit like that. I don't know what it fucking was,
That is.
but something that nobody knows, you know. And so
Oh,
Lucas,
because he met him on Rain People, which was the movie that Coppola was working on.
I think that's the one I was thinking about. Yeah, but he basically was like, "Hey, do this," and the idea behind it would have been intriguing for anybody to look at that as an actor, to be like, "Okay, you're acting in this movie." You're not going to be some dude driving a car or something. You're actually running. They're escaping, but they're just trying something new. You know, that's the crazy part about it.
Right. So with that movie, Rain People, they actually made a van that was like basically their whole
It's a mobile studio.
They did that for Rain People.
Yeah.
Lucas came on board. Of course, he's friends with Coppola now, right? And he made a documentary about them making that movie. Duvall was in that movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there you go.
Well, and I mean, your main people in this: Robert Duvall, Donald Pleasance, right?
What's Donald Pleasance from?
The Great Escape,
And
that movie Easter.
yeah, that was it.
Easter 1 and Easter 2.
Leprechaun 4. Or Halloween.
Yes,
You might
but
know
that
him
was
from Halloween.
way after this too.
Yeah, of course.
That was in 77,
Right.
which he did this, and to think, Lucas got two actors, okay, and this is another kind of really big similarity to Star Wars, because he got Obi-Wan, that was
Alec
like, what the
Guinness,
fuck
yeah.
is this, right? Alec Guinness, respected actor.
Right.
In this one, he gets fucking Donald Pleasance. Donald Pleasance, respected actor, gone through some shit, but then his range is in this weird kind of zone.
Right.
He does the weird shit, and he's not ashamed to do it. And you've seen him in like Warrior of the Lost World and weird fucking movies, and you're like, dude, that dude's just getting paid. You know what I mean? He's like the Bruce Willis of the 70s. But then,
I don't know if he was as prolific as Bruce Willis.
No.
And he certainly didn't have an easy flow elbow. Come on.
No. And I mean, they really did. They created something that was very misunderstood.
Sure.
I think the people that understood it in the way that it was like, this is science fiction. I think I need to watch it a couple of more times to really understand it and get it. But I get it from the outset in the way that it's enough to make me want to pay attention more.
I think one of the other things you need to know, besides the budget on this, is how much time they had to film this movie. 35 days. 35 days to film this movie.
And it was natural lighting. They used nothing but natural lighting for it, which is odd for a movie, especially a science fiction movie. And then you're already using things that were already built. So like the BART line, the Bay Area Rapid Transit line, still hadn't been finished yet, but yet they're using that.
They use that a lot, actually.
Yeah, they have, and just the hallways that they would use, or the parking structures, and everything was very sterile, but that was the
Civic
world.
Center, like they would get like where they had access to it when nobody else was there.
Right.
And apparently everybody that was, because again, Lucas is a brand new director, but everybody that was working with him was like, it was amazing how professional he was and how quickly he got access to the things he needed
Yeah.
to make it happen.
Right.
For somebody who's 25 years old.
25 years old. The only other 25-year-old director that knocked it out of the park whenever they first started was fucking Orson Welles. There's no, I mean, that was it. That was really it. But Orson Welles makes one of the greatest movies of all time at 25 years old. George Lucas changes everything at 25. but yet still doesn't make that movie like Wells did with Citizen Kane, you know, but if you look at this movie and, you know, I mean, you really, again, I like to look at it like Metropolis, even though Metropolis is like 18 hours long or some shit, you know what I mean? Right. Fucking the Buenos Aires version. But this one right here, this does, the runtime seems like it's a long time when you're watching it, but it really isn't
like
that
an hour
long.
and 28 minutes or something.
Yeah, 88 minutes. It's hardly anything. But
wow.
Yeah,
I remembered that.
Yeah, you're thrust into it. Right. You really are from the get go. Now the Maggie McComey, she was a stage actress, but they needed somebody that was haunting. Well, you know, kind of had a weird look.
Right, and so the other thing was they also had to find somebody that was willing to shave their head.
Yes,
and that was a big deal.
Everybody had to have shaved heads, but they were also using people from the rehab facilities,
which they were paying $30 a day, and they were like, "Yeah, shave my head."
I don't give a shit. I'm in fucking rehab right now. So you know there was drugs there.
But as far as the actress went, that was a big thing too. You know,
in the Don Pedro Coley, that dude a little different. And he stands out so much in this movie because he's so tall, but yet his acting is so aloof because of what he is.
Yes.
Which is like, that's fucking weird. You know what I mean? But then the stark whiteness of most of everything's
sterile. The prison rooms.
Yeah. What the fuck, man?
Well, that's pretty cool that they did that. So it was neat because I think it was only 100 or 150 feet long.
Yeah, it was nothing.
So they'd never have to change where the camera was. They would just like have them walking towards or walking away. So it looked very expansive.
Just like you would do with no budget. You're like, how the fuck am I going to make this work? So they went to that white studio that had nothing but white in it.
Right.
And then that's where Sid Haig's in it too.
Yeah.
Like Sid Haig, of course, nasty ass fucking character actor, was in all the fucking blaxploitation movies of like Coffee and shit like that. But then also he's in Tarantino movies and now, I think he's passed, hasn't he?
He's passed, yeah.
And then, plus he was...
a couple years ago.
Yeah, Rob Zombie's muse, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's in this one, and yeah, he's a creepy motherfucker in it.
Yeah.
But there's some really crazy shit, right? So do you want to get into the movie?
Sure.
So you're thrown into this, right? So we don't even know if it's a dystopian future. We don't know if it's anything like that. All we know is everybody's kind of working on these lines. They're always being watched. You really don't know what's going on. So you see THX, right? THX 1138. He's operating his little machine doing something. Mm-hmm. And in the original, you didn't really even know what the fuck he was doing. I don't even think they showed it.
No.
In this one, they're really kind of jamming it, and they really show all the really cool aspects of building these fucking peacekeeping robots, which is kind of weird. They're building droids. So again, lends you more into the
Star Wars for sure.
The beginning throws you off because in typical movies, the credits roll from the bottom.
Right.
These credits rolled from the top, and they were in that Return of the Jedi green.
Yeah.
You know, it was just very plain. But that's exactly what the whole movie is. So you're kind of faced with what the fuck is this going on, right? And they show the cuts, right, with the overlapping chatter and everything, where they go into the medicine cabinet and they're like, "Hey, what do you need? This is not working." So he's already, you have to infer that something's already wrong, right? And then you see another woman and Donald Pleasance, they all get introduced about the same time. Yeah. Donald Pleasance, I don't know what the fuck he really does. Is like he found a place to like hook up a whole bunch of computers and now he can manipulate shit. Right. Which is kind of weird. But then his wife, or what?
His mate,
LUH, LUH 3417, right? They're watching over things, but you can see in her face that it's just pure sadness. She really is that actress was really good at just like making you feel like, what the fuck is going on, right?
Right.
And of course, you know, I think his first shift that they really show him on, he drops something. So he kind of, or he's not as steady as he was.
Right.
So that's whenever he stops at the prayer booth.
The confession booth.
Yeah. It's a weird fucking picture of Jesus, and it's like,
it's from like it's a painting from like 1450s, I think.
And the thing is just there to listen. It's like, I know. But can you be more specific? But yet he says a prayer. He says some sort of a prayer at the very beginning when he gets in there, and he's like, something's wrong. I don't know what's going on. My mate won't sleep with me anymore. There's no whatever, right? So then he ends up buying something, and then that's when you get to see a little bit more of the world too, because they're saying to everybody, buy blue today or some shit like that. Consume. You were making what did they
consume and be happy?
Yeah, what was the thing they were making mandatory? Something they were making mandatory consumption or something like that. Mandatory consumption will be,
yeah, right.
Standardized consumption.
Okay, that's it.
That's what it is. So if you think about that, that is everything that's fucking going on right now. It's standardized. We're doing that. And then of course he gets to his, you see the one cop go in where the dude's like, I don't know what's going on. Oh, getting his like fucking red cube and shit. And so he shows up, he gets to their like domicile or wherever they're at. And she's like, THX. She calls him THX, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And
he doesn't answer shit because, he's all fucked up. But he doesn't really know what's going on. But we get to find out a little bit later that, yeah, his old lady had been changing his fucking drugs.
Right, because she's kind of off of them already.
She fell off the wagon on these things, which is a good thing because it opened her mind.
Right.
She's like, I want him to do the same thing.
But when he comes in and starts watching the holograph thing, and he's just watching that android beat on that person over and over and over again, I was like, what the?
Yeah, first he gets a boner watching the dance.
dancer, yeah.
And then that machine comes out and it's like, yay! And she's in the other room just letting it happen, right? But then she's switching his meds out, right? Mm-hmm. Switches for the yellow red ones, not the blue pills anymore. So he takes it. She's like, take it. Then they do show him praying at one point, and he's just like, you could tell that he's in another whole world. But yeah, he's got one more shift left that he's basically got to finish, and it's an important thing, right?
Right.
They got to put the power cells or uranium in the freaking thing's eyeballs or some shit. I don't know. So that's, Donald Pleasance is seeing all this shit. It's like he's targeting certain people.
Right.
Right. And he's got access to these machines, you find out. But yet he's targeting him specifically. So I think, doesn't he, she changes it out. He gets sick. He goes into the confessional booth and he's like, I don't know what's wrong. And he fucking vomits everywhere. Yeah. So he throws up. So at that point, he's clean. He goes back and he's like, I don't know what the fuck. This is crazy. So they start being amorous,
right?
So they start having sex and she's like,
they're boobies.
Yeah. They're watching. And he's like, no, they're not. But yeah,
there's like a whole group of them watching.
What the fuck is that, right? They're just watching this on TV and they're just like staring like, okay, so what do we
Well, and we
do
hear that
this?
earlier when they're in that control room where she works.
Yeah.
And they're like, unauthorized sexual perversion.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
What?
Yeah.
So that's where you're putting together this whole world that you don't know. Because at one point they have the explosion in the factory or whatnot.
And a separate portion of the factory, yeah.
And they compliment them. Another 68 dead. So the tally is 198 to 240 something.
Great job, guys.
Congratulations. And that's just in a cycle. So however long a cycle is to them,
I assume a year.
Yeah, so
of some sort.
Something like that.
Yeah,
so they each have their own little stations and it explodes, but yet they're like, just stay there. Everything's cool. There's no danger of radiation getting out while shit's fucking exploding.
Right.
And they show them pulling out these charred bodies from the fucking wherever they're at that other division or whatnot.
Right.
So he essentially is off the drugs and they kind of get into it. And
this is very much so movies that we've talked about that this is very much like Equilibrium.
Yes.
Like when he stops taking the drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think his wife did before him.
Yeah.
Kind of the same deal.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of inspiration drawn from this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and even the movie that we did more recently.
Yeah.
The Island.
Yeah,
This was definitely an inspiration for that. They even mentioned it.
Both of those right there have really big elements, strong elements towards that, just like 1983 and shit like that,
1983.
The
1984?
1984, whatever. 1984. Just a lot of that.
1983.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
Was that a prequel?
The year before we went to war. So basically he's off these drugs now, and he goes in, basically he leaves and he comes back, and then La is gone. Yeah. Right? But yet Donald Pleasance is there. It's like, oh, hey, it's you. Like fucking
He's like,
nosy.
you're not authorized to be here.
Yeah, he's like, what?
He's like, I want to be your mate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you rate really highly on the sanitary scale, So he's been picking this out. He's like, I could be really good to you, We'd be really strong mates. So I don't know if it's that polyamorous type of a world that they live in.
I don't think it has anything to do with being amorous at all, because that's not their society.
Yeah. So it's more like a companionship.
Right. And he even says, well, being a mate's computated. Mm-hmm. And he's like, those computations can be wrong, And she said that she thought maybe there was something wrong, anyways, which we know she didn't.
Right.
Because they just got done humping.
Yeah, well, she knows that she starts to freak out whenever she does give him the drugs, and he's like sick. And she's like in the room, and you can tell that she's kind of doubting shit. But then whenever he passes out, she goes to the medicine cabinet and shuts it. And it's like, never mind, So that's when Donald Pleasance was like, okay, here's my time, here's my move.
Well, and he's talking about having to go back and do his shift, right? And that's when she's like, well, you can't go back on the drugs, or you'll turn me in,
or you won't be able to do the job because you're not steady enough. Right. So there's two reasons why. And he's like, I just got to finish this and we can do whatever the fuck we want. So they're already planning it in the way that they're just like, let's just go.
And that's, is it right after that, I think, where they do meet up and they're walking, and she's like, been rescheduled, and he's like, to win, like, right now.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't go.
Yeah, it's Sin too.
Yeah.
It's fucking Donald Pleasance.
Right.
So Donald Pleasance is Sin. La is his
mate.
Regular mate, right? Yeah. So of course, they have a couple of more, like, I don't know. They have another kind of interaction to where they're just kind of exploring each other. They've never done it before, so it's never been about touch. It's just been more about like, hey, just fucking do your shit and get out,
Right.
He is actually Earthborn.
Right.
So I don't know what La is. He's Earthborn, so he was a naturally born person. So she could have been a clone, or any of those guys could have been clones. We don't know kind of the differentiate. You have to learn about that shit to know what he was and why he was kind of protected. So, and that's why, he didn't get immediately like terminated or anything like that. She got taken away, but he didn't because he's Earthborn.
Right.
So they're like, we can't waste the fucking allocations on this shit. And you can tell it's all about budget too, because they're all tallying the budget.
Talk about, like, anything that happens, that's going to cost, 360 credits or whatever.
Right. But then the bureaucracy is so fucking crazy whenever he goes in for his last shift. And they're like, you're going into a complicated phase. So the first one he goes through, no problem. Drops a little fucking deal. He's good, right? He grabs the second one. And at the same time, you notice that he's getting talked at by 2 or 3 people in his headset, but yet 2 or 3 other people are watching him, and they're like, all right, it's time to initiate the mind lock. So they can go into your fucking head and lock you out of anything.
So you're just standing there.
But the bureaucracy of it has no idea what the other side of it's doing, because they fucking mind lock him on the most sensitive part of his fucking job for the whole cycle or whatnot, right? So that shit fucking drops, burns through the fucking robot, goes through again. They're evacuating everybody. He can't fucking move because he's mind locked.
His eyes all rolled back in his head.
Yes. And they're like, and then you hear the one woman that initiates the mind lock after they turn it on and shit. She's like, we don't assume any responsibility for this fuck up.
Yeah.
It's not our fault. Somebody else did it. And they're like, oh, click, click. And she even gets a call and she's like, nope, not us. Bleak. She's like, what the fuck? fucking another major theme that's happening right now.
Sure.
So yeah, he actually gets taken out in handcuffs by the cops, which
They're the androids they're building.
Yeah, and it's an android tall cop, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, and even at one point he's like showing kids his baton. He's like, don't be rough with it.
Just this time.
Yeah. What the fuck, right? They're just like our cops.
Right.
They're nice on the surface until they get you alone and then they're fucking gonna fuck you up.
But turns out they're fucking big pussies.
Yeah, pretty much. You could knock them over and they're like, it's because of all the fucking stress that goes into them, I guess.
Right, I guess.
So
I'm just saying, if I was building a robot police force, I might make them a little sturdier.
right. Something. Well, shit, he ends up in a room, one of the white rooms on his own, and just like in a cell, surrounded by 3 of them with those fucking weird.
He's like running in circles. And
cattle prods, and because he's coming out of his drugs,
right,
even harder at this point. So, and they start shocking him, and they start hitting him in weird spots where he's just like, ugh, ugh. And then they show the monitors where they're controlling his brain, making him move weird shit.
Like even when they're not there, and he's like all twisted up, and
he extends his arms out, and then he flips over, and then like
doing some weird yoga.
Yeah, he's got some weird shit going on. But then Law comes in, and for some fucking odd reason, she gets in. I don't know if they let her come in or whatnot.
Yeah, they don't really explain that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's basically like, what the fuck, right?
Right.
So she comes in and she's like, hey, we're going to have a baby. And he's like, oh, for real? So then the dudes come in again and they're all naked and he's running around in his fucking shoes on, right? And that's it. Just fucking, and they knock him out and they carry him to the cell. But then he has the trial.
Right.
And the trial, they're like, no, we can't do this.
Incurable.
Yeah, they want to kill him, but they save him because he's Earthborn. They're like, well, we can't do that shit, you know. Right. So it's the typical like, oh, objection, Your Honor, you know. But it's like a whole fucking family of the same
like
people.
The one guy's like 12.
Yeah, yeah. He's like immediate termination. They're like, no, we don't warrant that, you know. And then he ends up in the fucking weird jail. He's in Gin Pop, right?
Yeah,
wherever the fuck they are, you know.
And Sin's there.
Yeah, Sin just shows up. He's like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" And he's just like, "Fucking like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know why I'm here. And all I can think of is I'm gonna have a kid. Where's love?"
What was the deal with the girl that the guy was like taking off the bed and putting her on the ground?
Yeah, that was Sid Haig right there.
I know,
yeah,
but I mean, like, where did she come from?
Well, and that's weird too because they're not supposed to be amorous at all. They're not supposed to be having sex or anything like that. But yet they have a woman with shredded clothes laying on a cot, you know, obviously probably been raped more than once, you know, which is fucked up. And they just threw her in there and then she freaks out.
As you do.
Of course.
When a dude takes you off your bed and then tries to have sex with you.
Behind a white corner.
Right.
Which is fucking weird. And of course, you know, I think at that point, Duvall freaks out because Sin is over there like, hey, we need to stand together. We need to fucking do this.
We'll find a way. Blah, blah, blah.
So he's fucking crazy. He's off his meds and he has been for a long time too. And I think that's where he might have noticed that they all could
That's where
get along.
Haig punches him in the mouth.
Yes. Just walks up and is like, smack. And then
just keeps walking. Like they don't address that at all.
No. And then the old dude too, he's like preaching and the old dude's like, no, well, you got to basically just be normal.
Yeah.
You know, kind of in this weird way. And you know, the nonchalantness of his talking, of the way that guy's talking, it just, you're like, you could be in the same room. Duvall freaks out, starts throwing shit. Yeah. Right? And he's just like, fuck it, let's go. After Sid Haig gets taken away. Though, the cops come in and he actually, Sid Haig knocks one down and then stamps on one.
Yeah, like stamps his face in.
Yeah, like
took like nothing.
Yes. It was like he was made of aluminum foil.
Wow. Take that.
Ow.
Guys.
So of course, you know, he's not eating or anything, and they have these like fucking nutrient biscuits or some lumps or something, right? He's like, here, take this, save it for later, blah blah blah. And so he's got fucking a shitload of food. It's like he's been hoarding.
He's just dropping food everywhere.
And it's bouncing.
Yeah.
Which is fucking weird. So it's like, it's all those Christmas loaves everybody threw away. All the fucking... So,
it's like tiny sardines or something, man.
Right. So they just walk in one direction. Yep. And of course...
And they just keep walking in the white room.
And he never...
No black curtains.
He never really says shit.
Duvall? No.
Yeah.
Like,
And
Sin the whole time is just yabber, 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 yabber.
it's like, is the air getting thin? Is it me? Is the
Duvall's
pressure
like,
weird?
I'm just going.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he stops and he looks forward, and then that's where you see that Don Pedro dude come
Yeah,
up.
he's like, is that somebody waving?
What? And he's like, hey, I'm a hologram. You know?
Yeah.
What?
So, okay, there is a little suspension of disbelief here because if he's a hologram, why is he hungry?
Yeah. And why is he lost?
Yeah.
You know, so he materialized on his own.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, he was like, hey, I just wanted to get out of there, so I did.
Yeah.
Okay. So does that mean he was one of the people on the news holo broadcasts or whatnot, right? He was one of those people that just said, you know, fuck it, I'm leaving my job. Or was he a real fucking hologram?
I thought he was a hologram.
Me too, right? So and he's in there like, yeah, he says something like, I thought I was lost, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, then I saw you guys. So everything's changed. And he's like, well, we don't know how to get out of here. And he's like, it's right there. Can't you see the door? And then you see it. You're like, holy shit. So they could have been walking in circles the whole time because that's what he kind of alludes to.
Yeah, yeah.
So they go through that door, and then that's when they hit the wave of people and shit like that. They kind of get through there, and Donald
And that's the
Pleasance-
first time you see any sort of shaky film a little bit. Like,
Right.
Like they're trying to create that,
documentary type deal.
the documentary kind of thing, but also that, like, what would be like if you walked into a bunch of people, especially after being in a white room
With two other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's it. You know,
and
so-
really one other guy. For it seemed like they were walking forever.
Yeah. They make it seem like that, and it
Yeah.
could have been like 5 minutes.
Right.
You know?
But they even mentioned, like, we've been walking a long time trying to find this. And
Yeah,
I was
why
like,
don't-
were
why-
you walking in circles?
Yeah, why don't we stop? You know? And he's like, no, I'm not going to stop. So, of course, you know.
Duvall.
Yeah, Duvall's like, meh. So he hangs on to fucking Don Pedro, right? And Sin gets lost, right?
Right.
He actually hops on a train while those two end up in like some other kind of broom closet weird
Yeah.
shit, right? And then that's whenever the hologram's like, hey, look at this. And he opens the deal, and then that's when the cops come after him. You know, because they go through that little deal and they start getting chased. So they're
Yeah.
running through the fucking corridors, and everybody's like, what the fuck, right?
So this is before they found the computer? And he asks, like, where Lull is? Luh? And it says, I think this is like
This is
right
after.
Yeah, so like right there.
Yeah. So like right before they
So
find
they
that
find
deal.
a computer and he like types in
Oh,
where's
no.
Luh?
Yeah, they almost got caught. So
Yeah.
they're running out of there, and this is before they get to the garage. So they get trapped in one of the broom closets again, like another video closet. So they're in there, and
And
he's
the
like,
cops
"Oh."
know they're there. This finally they tracked them down to right here.
Yeah, and the whole time they're talking about the budget. It was like 100 and or four. What is it? 14,600 credits or something like that
Sure.
to apprehend in time. So
We're gonna come in under budget, guys.
Yeah, they're like, yay. So, you know, basically they bamboozle the fucking android guards. They jump over them. They fucking start hauling ass again because they find out that La,
Has been sent back to her fetus.
huh? Where's the baby? She's been renamed
Yeah.
and she's a fetus, and they show it
In
and
a bottle.
yeah, and it's like, what the fuck, right?
Fetus in a jarro.
But they're in just some weird. They're just in some fucking weird place. It's got all that shit. I think they even walk past it a couple of times. They do go into one of the control rooms, and you know the cops are still chasing them. That's like right before when they finally get out and they're running, and they actually hit the garage, and that's when you see those fucking really badass cars, right?
Yeah.
It takes the big guy like fucking forever to get in that motherfucker. I would have been like, "Fuck you guys."
Takes him even longer to figure out how it runs.
Oh shit!
But that's the one thing too. Duvall like figured it out pretty quick.
It's like he had already done it before.
Yeah, but there's no reason for that.
He might have driven before. That might have been one of his cycle jobs.
Oh,
or something.
maybe, yeah.
I don't know, but they make it because one of the jokes on the Holo broadcast was it was two guys standing there, and he's like, "Hey, how do you like my new car?" And he's like, "Oh, it's great. Well, I just drove through the Civic Center the other day." And he's like mowing down people.
Yeah.
And like, it wasn't my fault. Ha 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 ha. You can hear it. And even Duvall says, "Oh, that was really funny." You know?
Yeah.
Because he's like, "Why did you change my fucking, android beating a dude
Right.
fucking movie?" You know what I mean? So So yeah, he gets in the car and he fucking takes off and he's like gone.
Yeah.
Waiting for the other dude, but the other dude can't fucking even figure it out until he does.
And then he like directly smashes into like a column.
It's like the whole fucking thing's full of water too, right? It's like too heavy. So it just fucking slams. Bam! And I guess he's dead.
Yeah, you assume.
Yeah, because
you don't ever see him again.
Yeah, because Duvall basically waits for him around the corner. Is like, okay.
When he doesn't.
But then he fucking takes off, and he's got to be cruising 200 miles an hour.
Well, I think they said it was like 230 something miles an hour, 238 or something like that.
And there's nobody else around. So
in real life, they were driving 120 miles, 140 miles an hour through those when they were filming.
Yeah, in a fiberglass car with no fucking reinforcement. You know what I mean? It was like, fuck this, right? So yeah, so I like the way that the cars look. They do look.
I thought it looked a little.
It's over advanced.
The back end of it kind of reminded me a little bit of the DeLorean.
Oh, okay.
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I was
like,
like,
they had like boosters and shit.
Yeah. But then we get the cops on the motorcycles.
They're still fucking. They're cruising fast as fuck.
Well, sure.
And his car eventually overheats. Right.
Right.
They reach a temperature part of it where it overheats, and then. He's like, well, shit. They almost.
Which that's a little Lucasism right there because Lucas was a mechanic prior to going to school and all that, right?
Yeah.
And that was in one of the I think it was the making of. He even mentions like Lucas like would always tell him that like he could just go listen to a car and tell you what was wrong with it.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
So it's cool that he brought in the overheating part because that would make sense, you know.
Yep. And then you got the two cops on the bike that are just closing in the whole time.
Right.
Right. Well, he finally he gets free of that shit and he takes off again. And
he starts hitting all those middle columns and busting them all up.
Yeah, they
you
show
don't know
him,
why.
Well, they show him in the actual like where he's darting in between things. It's like the Speed Racer scene that they added to it, you know, to where he goes into the tunnel. So there was people around, but he just took that tunnel.
But when he takes that tunnel, that's where they have the columns in the middle, and rather than staying in the line, he just takes them all out, which works out pretty well for him because then the cops come through there and they wreck.
Yeah. Well, you know the red and blue blocks that they had, that's what was in the middle.
Yeah,
you know? And then he's getting warned that because he keeps seeing them in his back radar. But then you get to see the dudes on the scaffolding, like they're painting or like doing electrical.
Because it says it's a dead end.
And he just fucking blows through it. And that's when the other cop jumps over. Because he does, one of the cops actually, you know, gets terminated early on, right? And then this cop flies over all the shit and fucking, then they show the counter. You know, it's like 30,606, you know, officers in the field.
So that was apparently when they were filming that portion, they had the angle wrong or the speed wrong because that guy almost hit the ceiling of that.
Yeah.
He didn't, but when he hit the ground, it looked like the bike went right over the top of him. So Lucas prior to this had said, hey, whatever you do, like after the shot, just don't move.
Right.
And so like that happens. Everybody freaks out and they run up and they start taking the shit off of him, pull the helmet off. And he's just looking at him like, why'd you ruin the shot?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what? So yeah,
I thought that was cool.
I know.
Cool antidote.
Like the dude was like badass.
Yeah.
There's like he really nailed it on the fucking cement and shit.
Yeah.
They're in some tunnel.
One take. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Because the first one that fell down, you get to see him like fucking start to try to get up and shit.
Yeah.
So they didn't cut that part out. I don't know why, or remaster it.
Yeah.
To make him lay there. But so we get a glimpse of what the outer shell dwellers look like because they were the little people.
Yeah, like he throws one of the little people in jail with him.
And he smells, and they're like, oh man, he smells. But anything would smell when everything's so sterile where you're at.
Exactly.
So anything coming from anywhere else, and this dude had a full beard, full head of hair, everything, right? And
everybody else is shaved.
Yeah, and he's like
clean.
He's like making music, you know, with his hands. You're like, what the fuck? So he's running in those tunnels, and that's where he sees some weird monkey people.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that, right?
I don't know.
And the little bitty thing that crawls on his foot. So he freaks out, and I guess he gets into some sort of fight with those things,
right?
While the cops are still chasing, and you can hear him.
But it doesn't last very long.
No, he just like hits one, and they're like,
and then runs.
Yeah. So he sees his way out. He's like, okay, because he knows he's really got nothing else, and he's just trying to figure out what's going on, wants to go outside. That was his original plan. So he ends up climbing up, and then the cops are like, hey, stop, we're gonna stop you, but it's like endless. It's like this huge long fucking thing that they're climbing up, which is actually
on the ground.
Yeah, they did the Batman with
tracks,
it. Yeah, they did the Batman with it,
and you could tell.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, the way that they're crawling on.
I'm like, man, this guy's got some stamina.
But right before they get to the top, guess what? The budget runs out.
And then they have to stop pursuing it.
They're like, stop. And he's like, hey, don't leave. We're only here to help. Screw it. We're out. And they're gone. And then he pops up at the very top to the sunshine.
Right.
Obviously, it's something he's never seen. But what I thought was really awesome about that last shot always was just the way that it looked. It was so out of focus, but yet disorienting.
Because they used a 1,000mm lens.
It's fucking crazy.
It took them 3 or 4 days to finally get that shot, because as the sun would set, the fog would roll in and they couldn't get their shot.
This one they could.
Right. And
they got it on that
wasn't
day.
Duval. It was one of the other guys that worked on one of the cinematographers or something.
Yeah, it was the second unit dudes. Yeah. So
and
they were
like,
out
I had
there.
to wear a bald cap because I had crazy ass hair.
But you couldn't fucking tell.
No,
you were
not
never
at
going to
all.
be able to tell.
Not with that shot. No way.
No. And then whenever they run the credits again, you're getting to see him for the first time, see the sun. So there you go. The whole world is open to this.
Right.
But you don't get to see anything else. So it leaves
So
it up
all
to your
that
imagination.
civilization was below ground.
His was.
Right.
Do you know?
Well, I mean, even those outside of his were underground.
Were they clones? Were they fucking?
You don't know.
Were they?
But they do make a comment when they're going by all those people, all these, because they're laying on those, like pretending like they're one of the bodies.
Oh yeah.
The hologram earlier on, and that's when they come by and like give him an earring.
Yeah, the tag
earring. And he freaks out.
Yeah. Oh my god, I would freak out too.
I think I'd try to bite the bullet a little bit. Like
he just like gets up and he's like, and like he's like reaching like a dog. They would like
But the hologram says like they don't have any organs.
Yeah, well, his gets harvested. His one gets harvested. His kidney.
No, I'm talking. Like he says none of these bodies have any organs.
Oh yeah. He notices that.
I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what makes me think. Obviously, the clone portion, right? They're doing something. They're harvesting these.
Yeah.
But then we also see her put back into like a fetus. Who the fuck knows? Dude?
But then also too, whenever he was getting examined before he goes into Gin Pop, right?
Yeah.
And they shove the tube in his mouth. They're cat scanning him.
They use that little claw thing that
You pick up screws with.
Yeah.
In a mechanic shop. So
I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah, it fucking works.
This is $1.50
But
at
from
the hardware store.
Yeah. So they take his fucking his liver, or they take his kidney or some shit like that, because he's a possible donor at that point. But he never shows that he was hurt.
Right.
Maybe that's why he was so disoriented when he went into the jail.
That would make sense.
Because they had harvested one of his organs.
Yeah. Probably a kidney more than a liver. Take a whole liver.
Yeah, you can only take like a half of one of those, can't you?
I think so. Take a half a liver and call me in the morning.
You don't want to take mine. But yeah, that's fucking THX 1138. That came out on March 11th, 1971.
Yep.
What is...
Filmed in 35 days with just under $800,000. The cool part with this too is Lucas said that so he in the daytime he would be filming and editing video, and then at night Murch would take what he had and start doing the sound. So they were on almost opposite schedules, but it was like every day, 24 hours. This movie was being made. Murch also made the only movie he ever directed was Return to Oz.
And Return to Oz is a fucking nightmare of a movie.
It really is.
It's badass though.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The first thing that I ever watched on Disney Plus was Return to Oz.
Yeah.
Because I saw it, was like, I gotta watch it. But no. Again, this movie literally is just like fucking so incredibly. I don't know. It's so multifaceted, but stale.
It also leaves enough open that you don't, again, that Japanese style, like you said, we're not going to explain it.
No. You have to figure it out. Yeah. You're going to see my vision of what this is.
Right.
Figure out what it is, bitch.
Yep.
Which, again, you look at the lived in world, you look at the the utopian type or dystopian type of deal. You look at all like everything was a precursor for Star Wars in such a fucking crazy way. But yet this original story didn't come from him anyway. You know,
Right.
he got it from somebody else. But
Yeah, like even the student film was like based on a script by these other two dudes.
Yeah,
You know,
but
they're
then,
like they're like, we have something better we're going to use. He's like, well, can I use that then?
yeah, can I have that?
Because like I'm a badass director apparently.
I can
Like,
mix all this
visually,
shit. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
visually, Lucas had it from the beginning, but Lucas was such a smart person. Like you said, he could listen to a car from a distance and be like, fucking second lifter to the left is off or some shit.
yeah, sure.
You know, you're firing wrong on this piston. You know, shit like that, which I can understand. And then him being able
He's
to
a problem solver.
him being able to do that and then end up on Star Wars where they're like, what the fuck are we watching? You did that THX movie? I don't know. And then boom.
But wait, the guy that did American Graffiti?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, those
Yeah.
are such a on opposite ends of the movie spectrum.
Big time.
You know.
Yeah, well, the cars were called Lola T70s. Freaking awesome cars.
Yeah, pretty cool looking.
Yeah.
A lot of times when they were going, like when the lights died, it made me think of like the electric cars that you used to have on the track.
Yes. Yes. Slot cars,
Yes,
man.
yeah. I was like, oh, they're slot cars.
I still want a slot car fucking track for real, dude. I would love it. Just do the figure eight.
Burning metal smell that you have. With
Yeah, because it's just raw electricity that's fucking pushing it. Raw electricity is turning a little fucking
I
wheel.
want the one that went up the wall.
Fucking A, man. I remember there was still some slot car places back when I was growing up, man. Up until my like mid-teens, I think.
Well, there were bigger ones that people were really hobbyists were really into.
Those fucking things. They're still going.
Well, I'm sure.
Like people still have those deals where they're going so fucking fast. Why?
I don't know. I always just remember driving mine around. Like, if you tried to like just hold it down, the fucker would fly right off the tracks.
Yes. Yes. You just try to make it go too fast. Guess what? Curve 3, it's
You're
gone.
Done. You're done, son.
You got to have a smaller straightaway for that one. But overall, I mean, this fucking movie was really ahead of its time. It's still awesome. I've always really liked it, and going back, and I know I had seen this remake, and that might be the copy that I had because I don't even remember if I had the original. But shit, it was such an incredible movie. You have to experience it because that's what it is. It's an experience.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's not your regular fare, you know. But I think also like the behind the scenes part of this makes me appreciate it even more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they were, and directly after this is when they told Coppola they needed all their money back for the remaining films, and basically bankrupted him.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked over American Zoetrope on that part of it, but then he makes
Makes a
Apocalypse
couple
Now.
moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, he makes a couple movies down the road that do pretty well.
Yeah. Godfather 3.
Out of all the Godfathers, you chose Godfather 3. Fucking kill myself now. Jesus.
Coda. The Godfather trilogy ender with Anthony Garcia. Hey, babe. Fucking Black Rain son of a bitch. No, I've always really liked this movie. Even the first time I saw it, I was like, wow. It's another kind of Buckaroo Banzai, but Buckaroo Banzai is way fucking cooler because of the rock and roll shit. But this is really like
It's a different style of movie for sure
Yeah.
than Buckaroo Banzai.
yeah. This one's just really cool, and yeah, it's boring sometimes. Some of it you really have to really want to look more in between the lines.
Yeah, this
To
is.
enjoy it.
I think it's why I hadn't seen it in quite a long time.
Yeah, it's not something you're gonna watch
I'm like,
two,
nah,
3
I don't
times
need to
a
watch
week.
that again.
Yeah, I get
remember
it.
watching that. Yeah,
But now that I know more about it,
right.
and more about kind of like the background, and I'm glad because the only thing I knew that it was his student film,
Right.
basically put on the big screen, and I know that it was the very first American Zoetrope one, but basically it almost fucked him.
Well,
you
it
know?
did fuck them. Yeah,
And-
Zoetrope was done after that.
And you have all these people that were part of that,
Right.
That would have been really big. Now imagine if this movie actually exploded.
Right. Sure.
Will we have had Star Wars?
Maybe.
Well,
Well, I
we
think
have
so. I
had-
think he already had that idea in his head, obviously.
Yeah, well,
Or
the Buck
something.
Rogers shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I don't know if we would have had it in the scope, or if we would have had him like, listen, bitches,
If
I
this
made
had
this
blown
one.
up and graffiti, he probably could have just done whatever. He probably would just had double the budget.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. If he would have done this in let's just say 1984, he actually did this one.
Okay.
And right after he did Jedi, that would be fucking crazy, huh?
Yeah. But there's a quote, and the reason that he did this movie first is when he was working with Coppola on whatever that other fucking movie, not the Rain People, the one prior to that. There's a recording of Coppola saying all these people get in, and I'm paraphrasing, get into this business and say they're going to make these commercial success movies so that they can make their own personal movies, and they never do.
Yeah, yeah,
So he's like, well, then I'm going to make this movie, you know?
yeah. The only two actors that have kind of done that in the history of that is like Clint Eastwood. He makes some movies that he wants to move. That he wants done, and so he'll make like a commercial movie and then make his. Make a commercial movie to make the studio a lot of money, then make his. The only other person is George Clooney that does the same shit. So then you got like Syriana, you know what I mean? You got all these independent.
I think a lot of people try to do that. Like, and when they get some fame, then they're like, okay, I'll tell you somebody, Pattinson.
Yeah.
Pattinson
Okay.
was like, I'm Twilight guy. As
I'm
soon
not
as he
gonna
got out of
live
that,
off
he
that.
just went and did independent stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And then, like, they had to woo him back into Batman.
Yeah. Right.
You know, or into Batman.
Well, then you got like one actress, Sarah Polley. She's like a very big independent kind of spirit director and shit.
Sure.
But yet she's made some commercial movies.
Yeah.
Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
The remake.
Yeah.
Which fucking you don't see her in a lot of shit. So, but anyway, final thoughts.
I think it's everybody should watch it once. And it's well worth it. It's good overall. It was definitely worth the watch. It's not something that's ever going to be in your wheelhouse where you're like, I need to watch this every year or so.
Yeah.
Every
5 years.
Yeah, maybe every 10. Because there's unless you're really digging into how he did some of the director, some of the cinematography, some of the effects, and how they did that on such a low budget,
Yeah. That's the thing that's really amazing, what he could do with nothing.
Right.
And I know his budget for Star Wars wasn't that big either.
Yeah.
And what he did with that is he created a fucking empire. And then now you have Pixar, THX,
See what you
have
did there with the
everything.
empire, yeah.
I know, right? He's pretty much, he changed the game.
Well, yeah, when you think about like what he came out of, let's just like coming out of Star Wars, right? Not only did he have his Star Wars franchise, he had Industrial Light and Magic. He had THX.
Pixar.
Well, he didn't have Pixar though, did he?
They started
Star
out.
Wars?
Yeah, they started.
In the 70s?
No, Pixar started as an extension company of
Lucasfilms?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was all.
But
they
I
were
think
all
that
in
was
the same-
later, right? It wasn't in the 70s.
A little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
probably like in the late to early 70s, where they, right before they
The
really
late
started
to early 70s?
whatever. Before they whenever they started adding more computer
Sure,
graphics
sure.
into everything, they were the ones.
Yeah, yeah. Industrial Light and Magic did a lot of that too, right?
Yeah,
What
they did. Industrial Light and Magic did a lot of the effects for all the Star Wars
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
So I was like, what the fuck?
But that was his company as well. So that's why he lived on Skywalker Ranch.
That's where everything is at. You
Yeah.
know, that's where
He was able to do everything from that compound, basically.
Marin County. Yeah. Yeah, which would be fucking awesome to go visit.
For
Like,
sure.
whoa, they make Star Wars here. Geez, guys, do you have any Wookiees?
Well, now you can just go to Disney World or whatever. They have the Jedi, whatever.
The training,
Yeah,
you know.
because now Disney owns everything. Now all restaurants are Taco Bell.
All restaurants are Disney. But anyway, yeah.
Check it out.
THX 1138.
Check it out, man.
Chia. That would be an awesome Chia Pet. There I go. I'm throwing that out there to the makers of Chia Pet. Have a THX 1138 Chia Pet. Robert
Just
Duvall's head.
Young Robert Duvall's face.
with no hair. You're growing Texas hair.
There you go.
And then you can have a lure or la. La from the planet Omicron Persei 8. All right. You can hit us up on dropculture.com, dropculture@gmail.com, social media networks of all kinds except for TikTok. We'll never do it.
Yeah. Podcastersonly.com. We're not that thirsty, though, just so you know. But yeah, let us know if you've seen THX 1138 or if you're going to watch it now. What your reaction is to it. We'd love to see any of that stuff, and you can hit us up any of those places Brock mentioned. But I think for now, let's get out of here.
That's it. I'm Brock.
And I'm Dan.
Later, dudes.
Peace.
Later, dudes.
Later, dudes. Check it out, man.
Hang 10.